You probably did it this morning. Maybe you didn't think twice about it. You reached into a cabinet, grabbed a bottle or a box, something brightly colored, vaguely lemony smelling, and let it do its job. But here's what almost nobody thinks about. That unremarkable moment. You, detergent, dirty dishes, or a pile of laundry is the endpoint of one of the most consequential technological journeys in human history. A journey that begins not in a laboratory, but in a slaughterhouse.
The history of detergent is, in many ways, the history of civilization itself. It touches war, famine, industrial ambition, a chemistry Nobel Prize, animal fat, and the ecology of our oceans. And it started, as most great things do, with a very simple, very human problem. Things get dirty, and we want them clean.
Part 1. The Ancient World. Fat, Ash, and Accident. Let's go back, way back, around 2800 BCE in ancient Babylon. Archaeological excavations of clay cylinders from this period, now housed in the Berlin Museum, revealed what historians believe to be one of the earliest recorded soap recipes. The inscription describes boiling water with alkali and cassia oil. Simple, functional, and almost certainly accidental in origin.
The origin myth of soap, and it may well have a kernel of truth, comes from ancient Rome. Mount Sapo, according to Roman legend, was a place where animals were sacrificed. Rainwater would mix with the animal fat and wood ash from the sacrificial fires, and this soapy gray mixture would run down into the Tiber River below. Women washing clothes in the river noticed that clothes cleaned near these runoff areas came out noticeably cleaner. Whether completely accurate or not, the legend captures a chemical truth. When fat meets alkali, like the potassium carbonate in wood ash, you get what chemists call saponification. You get soap. Ancient Egyptians used a similar substance for both cleaning and treating skin disease. The ERIE'S papyrus, dated to around 1550 BCE, describes combining animal and vegetable oils with alkaline salts. The Romans eventually spread soap making across their empire, and by the 2nd century CE, the Greek physician Galen was recommending soap not just for cleaning cloth, but for cleaning the body. For roughly the next 1500 years, humans didn't change the formula much. Wood ash plus animal fat, lye plus grease. Different cultures, same basic chemistry. Part 2. Guilds, Trade, and the Marseille Monopoly. By the Middle Ages, soap making had become a serious industry. In the 8th century, soap guilds appeared across Europe, in Marseille, France, in Castile, Spain, in Bristol, England. Soap was taxed. Soap was traded. Soap was, frankly, a luxury. Marseille became particularly famous. By the 17th century, Marseille soap, known as Savon de Marseille, was considered the gold standard of European cleaning products. Made from olive oil and sea salt, it was so prized that in 1688, King Louis XIV issued an edict mandating that any soap labeled Marseille soap had to be made within a specific radius of the city from specific ingredients. This was essentially the world's first soap appellation, not unlike the rules governing champagne today. England had its own soap story. For much of English history, soap was taxed so heavily that it was genuinely unaffordable for poor households. In the 18th century, government soap inspectors would actually visit soap makers
and lock the lids of their soap vats, only opening them on specific days for measurement and taxation. The soap tax in Britain wasn't repealed until 1853. The moment it was lifted, soap consumption in Britain more than doubled within a decade. Clean was becoming democratic. But the biggest revolution was still coming. Part 3. The Chemistry Revolution. In 1823, a French chemist named Michel-Eugène Chevreul published a landmark work, Recherche sur les corps gras d'origine animale, Research on Fatty Substances of Animal Origin. In it, he decoded for the first time exactly what soap was made of at a molecular level. He identified fatty acids, oleic acid, stearic acid, margaric acid, and demonstrated how they bonded with alkali to form soap. This wasn't just academic. This knowledge let manufacturers control and improve their products in ways that had never been possible before. For the first time, you could design soap rather than simply make it. Then came Justus von Liebig, the German chemist who pointed out that a nation's greatness could be measured by the amount of soap it consumed. He wasn't joking. He saw soap as a direct indicator of industrialization, hygiene, and prosperity. The Industrial Revolution accelerated everything. Steam-powered factories replaced guild workshops. Chemical engineering replaced craft intuition. William Proctor, a candle maker, and James Gamble, a soap maker, were brothers-in-law in Cincinnati, Ohio. Their father-in-law convinced them to become business partners. In 1837, they founded Procter & Gamble. Across the Atlantic, William Lever developed the first mass-marketed packaged soap, Sunlight Soap, launched in 1884. These brands didn't just sell soap, they invented modern consumer marketing. Part 4. War Changes Everything. The Birth of Synthetic Detergent. Here's where the story takes a sharp turn, and it starts with a blockade. During World War I, Britain imposed a naval blockade on Germany. Vital imports were cut off, including the fats and oils needed to make soap. Germany faced a catastrophic shortage. Soldiers couldn't clean their uniforms. Hospitals struggled to maintain sanitation. German chemists were ordered to find an alternative. In 1916, German company BASF produced the first synthetic detergent, a compound called nickel. It wasn't made from animal fat. It was synthesized from coal tar byproducts. It wasn't as effective as soap, but it worked. And crucially, it could be made entirely without animal fats. This was the conceptual birth of what we now call detergent, as distinct from soap. The chemistry is fundamentally different. Soap is made through saponification of natural fats. Synthetic detergent is made from petrochemicals through a process called sulfonation, where sulfuric acid modifies hydrocarbon molecules into surfactants. A surfactant, from surface active agent, is the key molecule in any cleaning product. One end is hydrophilic. It loves water. The other end is hydrophobic. It loves oil and grease. When a surfactant molecule encounters a greasy stain, the hydrophobic end buries itself in the grease, while the hydrophilic end stays in the water, lifting the grease away from the surface and suspending it until it's rinsed away. This is the fundamental mechanism, and it was fully understood for the first time in the context of wartime necessity. Part 5. The Post-War Boom. Tide and the American Laundry.
After World War II, the United States entered an era of unprecedented consumer optimism. Returning soldiers started families, suburbs spread. The washing machine became a household fixture. And with the washing machine came a critical problem. Soap doesn't work well in hard water. Hard water contains high concentrations of calcium and magnesium ions, and these react with soap to form an insoluble gray scum, the ring around your bathtub, the scale on your shower head. For the exploding market of automatic washing machines, soap was actually a poor fit.
Synthetic detergent was the answer. In 1946, Procter & Gamble launched Tide. It was a sensation. By 1950, Tide held more than 30% of the United States laundry market. P&G spent aggressively on advertising, particularly on the radio dramas that, incidentally, got the name soap operas from their original soap sponsors.
In the United Kingdom, Unilever launched Surf. In Germany, Henkel's Persil evolved rapidly. By the 1960s, synthetic detergent had almost entirely replaced traditional soap for laundry and dishwashing across the developed world. Part 6. The rivers turned to foam. But there was a problem nobody anticipated. By the late 1950s, rivers and streams across Europe and North America were foaming. Cities reported tap water coming out of faucets with a layer of suds. Groundwater wells were contaminated. Fish populations declined. The culprit was the surfactants in synthetic detergents, and specifically their relationship with bacteria. The first generation of synthetic surfactants, branch-chain alkylbenzene sulfonates, were not biodegradable. Bacteria in sewage treatment plants and in natural waterways simply couldn't break them down. The detergents accumulated. Rivers foamed. This was arguably one of the first major modern environmental crises caused by synthetic chemistry. Under government pressure in both the United States and Europe, detergent manufacturers reformulated their products. They replaced branched-chain surfactants with linear alkylbenzene sulfonates, LAS, compounds that bacteria could metabolize. By 1965, the foaming rivers largely cleared. It was one of the first times that environmental science directly forced industrial chemistry to change course. But the story wasn't over. Part 7. The Phosphate Problem and Lake Erie's Death. The next crisis came from phosphates. In the post-war era, manufacturers discovered that adding phosphates, specifically sodium tripolyphosphate, dramatically improved cleaning performance. They act as builders, softening water, preventing dirt from redepositing onto fabric, boosting surfactant power. Cheap, effective, everywhere. But phosphates are also plant nutrients, specifically the limiting nutrient in most freshwater ecosystems. The amount of phosphate in the water controls how much algae can grow. As phosphate-laden wastewater poured into lakes and rivers through the 1950s and 60s, it triggered explosive algae blooms, a process called eutrophication. The algae consumed oxygen as they decomposed, creating dead zones where fish could not survive. Lake Erie became the symbol of this crisis. By the mid-1960s, it was widely described as a dead lake. Scientific surveys found its bottom waters completely depleted of oxygen during summer months. Algae blooms were visible from the air. Beaches were closed. Fish populations collapsed. In 1969, the Cuyahoga River, which feeds Lake Erie, and was so polluted it had caught fire multiple times, became a catalyst for the modern environmental movement and contributed directly to the U.S. Clean Water Act of 1972. Detergent phosphates were a significant part of that catastrophe. Starting in the early 1970s, countries began banning them from laundry detergents. Today, phosphate detergents are banned or severely restricted across most of Europe and large parts of the United States.
Part 8. Concentrated, green, and enzymatic. Modern detergent science. The story didn't end with the phosphate ban. It accelerated into something extraordinary. In the 1980s and 90s, detergent science entered a new era, driven by enzymes, biological molecules that accelerate chemical reactions. Today, a modern laundry detergent contains a sophisticated cocktail of them. Proteases break down protein-based stains, blood, grass, egg. Lipases attack fats and oils. Amylases target starch. Cellulases actually repair cotton fibers at a microscopic level, keeping fabrics looking newer for longer. These enzymes are produced by fermentation, growing specific bacteria or fungi in industrial bioreactors and harvesting their enzymatic output. It is, in the truest sense, biotechnology inside your washing machine. The development of enzyme-based cold water detergents was particularly significant. Washing in cold water dramatically reduces household energy consumption, and the enzymes function effectively at low temperatures, something traditional soap could never do.
Then came concentration. By removing filler materials, the inert sodium sulfate that bulked up powder detergents, manufacturers produced far more concentrated products, less packaging, less shipping, less plastic per load. The single-dose pod, introduced commercially in the early 2010s under the Tide Pods brand, was an engineering achievement. A water-soluble polyvinyl alcohol film encasing precisely measured doses of surfactant, enzyme, and bleach, each compartment engineered to release at exactly the right moment in the wash cycle.
Part 9. The global picture. Detergent, inequality, and the future. Step back for a moment and consider the scale. The global detergent market is today valued at over $150 billion annually. The average American household spends roughly $150 to $200 per year on laundry and dishwashing products alone. But that global picture is deeply uneven.
For billions of people in lower-income countries, access to effective cleaning products remains limited, and the consequences are severe. The World Health Organization has repeatedly documented the relationship between access to soap and the reduction of diarrheal disease, cholera, typhoid, and respiratory illness. Simple hand washing with soap prevents millions of deaths every year. And yet, roughly 3 billion people currently lack access to hand-washing facilities with soap at home. During the COVID-19 pandemic, this disparity became stark. While wealthy world media discussed hand sanitizer shortages, public health organizations were focused on an older, simpler, more powerful message. Soap and water remain the gold standard for preventing viral transmission. The same basic chemistry discovered thousands of years ago, fat meeting alkali, was at the center of a global pandemic response.
So, let's go back to where we started. That bottle under your sink, that box on the laundry shelf. Inside it
is the distilled result of 4,000 years of human problem solving, of Babylonian clay tablets and Roman river myths, of medieval tax collectors and wartime German chemists, of foaming rivers and dying lakes, and environmental regulation that forced industry to do better, of scientists who figured out how fat molecules interact with water, of engineers who worked out how to put an enzyme into a dissolvable pod, of public health workers who still fight today to get the simplest version of this chemistry into the hands of people who need it most. The history of detergent is a history of ingenuity born from necessity. It is a story about what happens when science meets commerce, when progress meets consequence, and when civilizations decide again and again that clean matters.
Next time you do the laundry, you might think about that. Or you might not. Either way, the science works.
Thank you for spending this time with me. History is filled with remarkable lives and untold stories, and this is only one of them. Until our next journey, take care, stay curious, and remember, history lives on for as long as we keep listening to it, learning from it, and sharing it. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next story.